I used to work as a seasonal ranger for a national park out west, the kind of place where tourists come to take pictures of tall trees, hike scenic trails, and maybe if they're lucky, spot some deer or a bear from a safe distance. For me, the appeal was different. I liked the solitude, the quiet, the long patrols where the only sound was the crunch of gravel under my boots or the wind through the trees. This story took place during my third season on the job. I'd already done the rounds for most of the big trails and high-traffic areas, so that year I got assigned to monitor a more remote section of the park, an area close to the public because of landslides and poor trail conditions. Basically, it was a forgotten part of the forest. No visitors, no maintenance, just me, a map, and a radio that worked maybe half the time if I held it high enough. My job was simple: hike the area, take notes on any damage, and report back. No need to fix anything, just observe and log. I was fine with that. I liked the isolation. At least, I thought I did. The first few days were uneventful. The trails were barely visible under years of pine needles and fallen branches. I came across old signs bleached white from the sun and rusted-out trail markers that pointed to nowhere. My GPS barely worked out there, but I had my compass and a marked map from HQ. Still, after a few days, the same thought kept crossing my mind. I didn't like how quiet it was out there. The deeper I went, the more unnatural the silence became. No birds, no rustling of small animals in the brush, just nothing. At first I chalked it up to the area being largely abandoned. Maybe it wasn't attractive to wildlife. But there was something else, something I couldn't quite name. A feeling, more than anything, that I was being watched. And not just in the vague, paranoid way. I mean really watched. On the fourth day, something strange happened. It was late afternoon, and I had just reached a clearing near the bottom of a ridge. I took off my pack to rest and drink some water. That's when I saw it. Footprints. Not boot prints. Bare feet. They looked fresh, just pressed into the damp soil along the edge of the clearing. At first, I thought maybe I was mistaken, but as I walked closer, I saw more. A single set of prints, walking in a perfectly straight line from the edge of the trees to the center of the clearing. And then, they stopped. Just stopped. No signs of someone turning around. No shuffle in the dirt, just a single trail of bare feet that ended, as if the person had vanished into thin air. That night, back at my temporary cabin near the ranger station, I radioed it in. My supervisor, Carl, told me not to worry. Probably just some off-the-grid camper. People sneak in all the time, he said. Just keep an eye out. Don't confront anyone unless you have to. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But something about those prints didn't sit right with me. The next day, I returned to the clearing. The footprints were still there, but this time, there were more. A second set, smaller, and they weren't walking. These were crouched, almost crawling alongside the originals. They trailed off into the woods, into an area I hadn't yet explored. I followed them. The forest was thicker here. Dense. The kind of thick where you couldn't see more than 20 feet in any direction. The prints continued, occasionally disappearing when the terrain turned rocky, only to reappear in the moss or soft dirt. I followed them for over an hour until I reached something that made me stop cold. It was a cabin, but not like the ones we had for rangers. This was old, rotting, moss-covered. It didn't show up on any of the maps I'd studied. Windows were boarded up. The door was cracked open, and from where I stood, I could see a crude wooden carving nailed to the wall, a figure with elongated limbs and no face. Against every instinct I had, I went inside. The cabin smelled like wet earth and decay. The floor creaked under my weight, and dust swirled in the beams of sunlight filtering through the broken roof. There was furniture, barely. A table, a chair, and something that looked like a bed frame made of branches. But what caught my eye were the walls. They were covered in markings, not paint, scratches, thousands of scratches. Symbols, tally marks, and handprints, all small, child-sized. I backed out slowly, not taking my eyes off the walls until I was outside again. The forest felt even darker now, like something had shifted. I marked the location on my map and left, moving as fast as I could without breaking into a run. That night, I had trouble sleeping. I kept thinking about those footprints, the scratches, the cabin. I radioed Carl again, told him what I found. "You sure you didn't just stumble onto some abandoned hunter shack?" he asked. "No," I said. "Something's wrong out there. He promised to send a team out the following week to investigate. But I had 2 more days before my assignment ended, and I was expected to keep patrolling. The next morning, I packed my gear and decided to take a different trail. I wanted to put some distance between me and that cabin. But as I moved deeper into the woods, I got that same feeling again, that I wasn't alone. Then I started seeing the symbols, carved into tree trunks, painted in black ash on rocks, the same ones from the cabin, over and over, like breadcrumbs, leading somewhere. It was late afternoon when I heard it, laughter, faint, high-pitched children's laughter. It came from ahead, through the trees. I froze. There shouldn't have been anyone out here, and certainly not children. I called out, "Hello?" Silence. Then footsteps, soft, running, circling me. I spun around, trying to catch a glimpse of who or what was out there. But I saw nothing, only shadows between the trees. And then something stepped out. It was a child, or at least it looked like one. But it was wrong. Too pale, eyes too large, movements too twitchy, too unnatural. It stared at me for a second, tilted its head, then darted back into the woods, moving on all fours. I didn't follow. I ran, straight back to camp. I quit that night, packed my things and left a note for Carl. Told him I couldn't finish the patrol, couldn't go back into those woods. I never went back. A few weeks later, I got a call from one of the rangers I used to work with. He told me the investigation team went to check out the cabin, but they never found it. The location I marked led to nothing but trees and rocks. No footprints, no scratches, nothing. It was like it had never existed. But I know what I saw, and sometimes when I'm trying to fall asleep, I still hear that laughter. Faint, high-pitched, coming from just beyond the trees. It's been 8 years since I graduated from college. I went to Cooper Union, a small technical school tucked into the heart of Manhattan. Studying in New York City was unforgettable. Even with the chaos and noise of the city, it somehow became the backdrop to some of my most formative years. We didn't have a huge Greek life scene, so when a fraternity extended an invitation, I joined. The events they hosted were pretty tame for the most part, until we got to initiation week. That's when things got weird. One of the most infamous traditions during our initiation was what they called the subway crawl. It involved sneaking into a disused subway tunnel, navigating from one abandoned platform to another, and then rejoining the active line a few stops down. Sounds dangerous, right? It was. But they swore they'd planned the route with the MTA schedule in mind, timing it so there wouldn't be any trains running through while we were on the tracks. Still, the risk was real. There were 10 of us in the pledge class. My closest friend in the group was a guy named Riker, a funny Albanian stoner who could turn any tense situation into a comedy routine. I always said he should try stand-up. That night, our fraternity brothers handed us 2 flashlights and 1 disposable camera and told us to get moving. It was around 3 a.m., and the streets above were almost completely silent. We entered through a maintenance access point and began walking along the dark tracks, single file. Riker and I were at the back, trailing behind the group. Maybe 20 minutes in, Riker had what he called a brilliant idea and pulled a pre-rolled joint from his jacket. With the rest of the group echoing faint laughter up ahead, he leaned in and whispered, "Just for us. They won't even notice." I hesitated but agreed. When else was I going to smoke a joint under the streets of Manhattan? We stopped briefly, sharing the joint in silence, the tunnel swallowing our laughter. After finishing it, we realized the group had moved much further ahead. We started walking faster to catch up. Then we saw someone standing in the tunnel up ahead. They were just standing there, motionless, facing us. We didn't have a flashlight anymore, but dim track lights lit up the silhouette. "David?" Riker called. No response. Then, from much farther up the tunnel, we heard David's voice respond, "Yeah?" That's when our hearts dropped. The person standing in front of us wasn't David. Before we could even move, the figure lunged. No sound, just movement, sprinting straight toward us. We turned and ran. I was too high. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would explode. It felt like I was trying to outrun a nightmare. We sprinted back the way we came, but Riker suddenly grabbed my arm and yanked me toward a divider between the tracks. "This way," he whispered, frantic. We crossed over to a parallel track, the same direction the rest of the group had gone. It was dangerous, but we had no choice. I didn't think. I just followed. The scariest part, Whoever was chasing us followed too. They managed to find a crossing point just like us and kept running behind. The tunnel wasn't straight. We could only see so far ahead. Riker and I kept sprinting, praying we wouldn't run into a dead end. I started to feel lightheaded. I wanted to stop, vomit, pass out, anything. But then we saw a faint glow in the distance, the abandoned platform. Then the worst thing happened. The track began to vibrate. A train was coming. Not on our original track, on this one. We were running directly toward it. "There!" Riker yelled. He had seen another divider ahead. We darted for it and scrambled across just seconds before the train roared past behind us, the wind almost knocking us off balance. We stumbled onto the abandoned platform, heaving for breath. The rest of our pledge class looked shocked as we told them what happened. Riker explained everything while I bent over and puked onto the concrete. Seconds later, another train passed on the opposite track. We waited for whoever had been chasing us to emerge. No one came. But then, faintly, from deeper in the tunnel, we heard it again. A scream, not a yell. A scream, wild and feral, echoing. We didn't stick around to find out what it was. Once the train cleared, we sprinted the rest of the way to the next station and climbed out. Back at the frat house, no one made jokes. No one laughed. Not even Riker. We still don't know who or what that figure was. Maybe just a homeless person, high out of their mind. Maybe someone looking to scare some dumb kids. But how did they avoid the train? How did they cross the divider with such ease? Weeks later, I did some digging. That section of the subway hadn't been officially in use for decades, but old urban legends about it still floated around. Stories of people disappearing, of strange noises, of a figure that chased trespassers away from forgotten platforms. Most of it sounded like internet creepypasta. But then one of our alumni visited the frat house a few months later. Over beers, he asked if we had done the subway crawl. We nodded. He went quiet. "Did you guys see him?" Riker and I exchanged looks. "Who? Tall guy, black jacket, doesn't talk." "Yeah," Riker said. "We did." The alum took a long sip of his drink. "We saw him too, my year, same tunnel, same time of night." "Who is he?" I asked. He shook his head. "No one knows. But I do know this. Next year we stopped doing the crawl. It got too dangerous. To this day, that subway tunnel haunts my dreams. Every now and then I'll wake up in a cold sweat, heart racing, remembering the sound of footsteps behind me and the train rushing toward us. I've never gone back down there, and I never will.